you very much.
Thank you.
Take a seat. Now, there were some warm hugs backstage because you two actually know each other.
Yeah.
You've worked together before, is that right?
We have
Yeah.
on many occasions.
Yeah.
I mean, we used to take a lot of executives, we still do, to interesting places. A lot of times we would go to Silicon Valley and then we would see each other quite regularly. So, yeah.
Yeah. And other fun fact, April has some Finnish heritage. How have you enjoyed being here and embracing that as part of Nordic Business
You have
Forum?
Finnish heritage? I didn't know that.
I am actually, I'm half Finnish by heritage. My dad was 100% Finnish, but grew up in the U.S. So didn't grow up here, and I absolutely love being back in Finland.
Finnish?
I do not, and you're asking me that on stage. But my dad spoke some, and then moved to San Francisco, which is where we met for the first time. And at that point, there weren't that many Finns in San Francisco. But anyway, it's wonderful to be back, and just delighted to be here with all of you today.
Have you had much experience working with Finnish businesses at all in your career?
I have, actually. I've worked with several startups. I've also worked with the government, business development, economic development, and actually, I mean, small side note, but it's interesting, the ministries of the economy and of travel and tourism around happiness, and Finland being the happiest country and so forth, but there was a master class, and they were curious on what does our relationship to change and uncertainty, what does that have to do with happiness? And in fact, there's a huge connection. Our ability to navigate change in the unknown has a direct connection with, and when I say happiness, more that sense of fulfillment, contentment, so forth.
Yeah,
so I did that
well-being
work as well.
Security. Yeah, we've talked about that a couple of times here because it just keeps staying at the top of the rankings, Finland, or very near the top of the rankings.
The delta between Finland and other countries, I don't know if you know, is getting bigger, not smaller. So.
Yeah. Okay, well, interesting side note.
Yeah.
Let's dive into innovation and leadership. I would like to ask both of you really, what are the top 3 qualities you think leaders need for navigating change in this difficult times? Just straight off the top of your head, let's go with you, Peter.
Well, I think the first thing is that being comfortable with uncertainty is, I think, number one. I mean, we live in this never normal environment, and you still see a lot of leaders clinging on to the past that doesn't work anymore. Being comfortable with uncertainty, I think, is priority number one. Number 2 is, I think, being able to help the rest of the organization understand that uncertainty is an upside and that you can actually find ways to leverage and utilize uncertainty. And I think 3 is, finding ways to build an organization that is capable of learning. I mean, I'm a huge John Hagel fan. He said, the problem is that we have built our companies today for scalable efficiency. What we need to do is build our companies for scalable learning. And I think that is very much in line with the whole uncertainty, never normal environment. But for leadership, I think those are key ingredients.
Yeah, we've had a lot of speakers here in the studio talking about the need to be curious and to keep learning. April, what's your take?
Well, I'm like, I want to echo everything that Peter just said, and I need to say something new. So I'm going to put a slightly like a flux lens on this, and some of the superpowers, leadership practices we didn't talk about this morning or earlier this afternoon, but that actually put some of this into action. So I think one is much, much better understanding of the role of trust. It's one thing to say accept uncertainty. It's like, well, how? In times of great uncertainty, if you do not have trust, it is very hard to move forward. Because when something is uncertain, you need to be able to trust. Sometimes it's trusting someone else. Sometimes it's trusting that the sun will rise tomorrow. Oftentimes it's trusting yourself. And trust is one of those concepts we don't have a very rich understanding of. There's a kind of trust that comes from your head. There's a kind of trust that comes from your heart. But you've got to invest a lot more in the role of trust and understanding where it's strong and weak. So that would be one thing I would mention. And then another thing I'll just add out there because it's related to some things that came up earlier today is rethinking what careers look like. And so we've talked about this before, but the future career for your team, for individuals, is not going to be a ladder that you climb. It's not going to be a path that you pursue. I think about it as like a portfolio that individuals are going to curate. What does it look like to design that in an organization? So that's, I would say that one as well. And you asked for 3, but
I mean, those are strong enough and detailed enough.
Yeah,
I think.
we have lots to cover.
Indeed. But speaking of, you talked about people not necessarily climbing the ladder in the way that they did before, redesigning careers. One of the other things we've talked about here in the studio is leadership tenure. So if you are a CEO or a founder, when do you need to know when to step aside, either because the company's evolving or because other people need to evolve into the role? How do you both think top leaders should navigate tenure? Who wants to go first?
You want me to go first?
Yes, please.
So this is a really hot topic because I think one of the words of last year was founder mode, right?
Yeah.
And it came out of
Airbnb founder.
Yeah, and the whole Silicon Valley where Brian Chesky basically said, I was a founder, everything was great. Then I started hiring managers and it all went to shit. And I had to go back and take control because we weren't as sharp anymore. And the strange thing about Silicon Valley is there's a lot of founder mode also historically. Steve Jobs was the classic founder mode. I mean, he was probably a horrible person to work with. He was a terrible, terrible boss, but he also inspired people to do amazing things. So can you actually find that that is bad? But today we see a tendency that managers are often put in a very bad position. And this idea of taking control and really going to the roots and having success is absolutely there. What I think is even more important is that we try and find ways that even as a leader you evolve, that as a leader you have a journey and that you're capable of accepting that and also taking people along in your journey. I've written a lot about phoenixes, which are companies that can transform themselves. And I've often found that phoenixes have leaders that are not the founder mode types, because that's what you find in unicorns. But these are people that actually are capable of nurturing some sort of collective entrepreneurship. One of my favorite phoenixes is Walmart. And this is a company that has 70 years of history, 1.6 million employees, led by an amazing leader, Doug McMillon. And Doug is not the sole entrepreneur. He's not the lone ranger. He's not the founder mode, but he takes people along in what I call collective entrepreneurialism, that everybody feels collectively that they're responsible for taking that next leap. And I think if you can nurture that type of collective entrepreneurship, I think that is a really interesting way to look at that journey of leadership.
Yeah, we talked a bit about that with Simon Sinek yesterday as well, being an empathic leader and leading with purpose so that people want to come with you along the way. April, what would you add?
And I want to add just two things to that. One is, and it's interesting, so I first met Doug in 2011. Long before his ascent, and you saw those values. I don't know if you know, the CEO of Walmart began in high school as a cashier at Walmart.
Yeah, and bagging groceries, right? Yeah.
And that ethic, but then so the two pieces, I want to pick up on one thing that you said, you're talking about collective entrepreneurship, and I think more broadly, the collective wisdom that is within teams. And when we say there's like one leader, all of a sudden, not only are the burden's on you've got to figure it out, but there's so much wisdom, and I look at everything through a flux, change, uncertainty lens. There is so much wisdom we actually have when it comes to how to navigate change and uncertainty well, that we mostly don't know about each other because it's not on our resumes, it's not on our LinkedIn profiles. And if you can identify where so what Peter was saying earlier, that's the skill we need. And if we can identify a collection of people who are good at this in different ways and have that collective leadership wisdom, it's going to be way better than any single individual. So that piece around the collective I want to bring up. And then the other piece to just build on is just this sense of humility. And you can be a very strong leader and you can still be humble. And to signal, as a leader, to signal that you have vision, you have purpose, you know how to lead, but you're also humble enough to say the best thing I can do is surround myself by the people who know much more than I do about certain things, and to be, in effect, the conductor of an orchestra, but it's the orchestra that's playing. I think that's becoming ever more important.
So innovation is a group sport.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
If I can add on that just briefly, I think one of the things that I find interesting is you mentioned the word purpose. I think for a European audience, that sometimes doesn't always translate well. But I think relevance is maybe even more important, because let's be honest. I mean, we're really privileged that we have people who want to work for us. But should we actually we have to make sure that these people find it relevant the time they spend with us. And I've been deeply influenced by, I started teaching at London Business School 15 years ago. My mentor there was Rob Goffey. And he's now retired, but he's had a huge influence on my thinking about leadership. And he wrote this amazing book years ago that was called Why Should Anyone Be Led by You? And I still remember, I did sessions with him where he would walk into the board of a big bank. And all these board members had amazing accomplishments. They were all very, very senior people. And he would just wait until the room went silent. And he would look them in the eye and say, why should anyone here in this company be led by you? And you saw all these big people just staring at their shoes, hoping that he wouldn't pick on them. But that is still the very core question. You want to make sure that the time you spend with an organization is relevant. And I think as leadership, why should anyone be led by you?
Fascinating to hear that background. We've got questions coming in for both of you, so I want to give the audience a chance to say their words as well. This one must be for you, April. Which of the Flux superpowers do you personally find hardest to practice?
Oh, whoever asked that question, I adore you. I just want to say you're speaking my language. Here's where it gets really interesting. So I didn't, these superpowers, these practices aren't something that just dropped into my world one day. It's been a lot of thrashing through what are the dynamics around change that are hard for people, right? Change isn't this one thing. It's not a monolith. We love it, we hate it, we resist it, we embrace it. It's messy. And so you've got the pace of change, you've got the not knowing, you've got the role of trust, all these different things. And what's fascinating, so for me, in terms of my own practice, my own evolution through that it used to be the one that I found, and I'm gonna not reshape the question, but answer it in a way that I think is gonna make more sense and add on it, is that it used to be, I would be most excited about the one that I felt best about. I'm good at this, so I'm gonna keep practicing it. Because it felt good, it was low-hanging fruit, whatever. Over the years, and this is kind of trying to walk my own talk for sure, but the practice I'm most interested in, the one I get most excited about, is now the one where I see the most potential for growth. So it's actually the hardest one. It's the one that's gonna make me mad, frustrate, all that. But I see that actually my delta for improvement is that much better. And I think ultimately it just underscores the fact that hard things bring satisfaction. We don't want to deal with change. We don't want to, resist it. Doing the work actually not only helps you navigate change better, it brings a kind of satisfaction and awareness that it's hard to put that in, to quantify that. So that would be my evolution.
And I want to ask Peter then a similar question. Which of the things that you preach are hardest to practice?
It's very simple. I mean, I've been preaching for a long time on the day after tomorrow, where I say you have to reserve 10% of your time on the day after tomorrow, else you're going to become irrelevant. But in a world which is changing so quickly, I mean, am I capable of doing that? And 10% of your time, I don't know how many hours you guys work, 40 hours, 50 hours, I don't know. But say you work 40 hours a week. Can you spend 4 hours a week only on things that are not today, not tomorrow, not shit of yesterday, but really things that are outside of your normal domain where you think I'm actually going to learn? 4 hours every week. Trying to do that myself is one of the hardest things. But I think that confrontation becomes really interesting. Can you carve out that discipline for the 10%?
Do you block it out in your calendar?
I try to. And of course, with the travel schedule, it's not always easy to do that. The good time is from time to time, I have a lot of, time in an airplane where I can finally read a book that I really want to read and understand. But I really try to carve out the discipline, because if you don't, then today, tomorrow, and the shit of yesterday catches up and you have no time.
Okay, top tip. A lot of people flying home, so maybe they can start using that commute.
And I'll build on that briefly. I know that I think Peter, there's a lot of people, we travel a lot, so forth. I've also found that sense, and I can't say that I do 4 hours. I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. But I've also learned that when you're busy, we didn't talk about this earlier, but I just geek out on the cultures of change. and how different peoples and cultures and communities have seen change throughout time immemorial. And if I don't have time to like read the book, when you're traveling, if I'm in a different culture, it is a chance to get outside yourself
and open up
and learn something new. And so opportunities abound. I mean, I'm thinking about this forum. You drop into this, and this has to count for some of those 4 hours, right? Being here, looking around, those things that just aren't on my radar on a daily basis, and yet are going to have some role in shaping what comes the day after tomorrow.
So we can give the audience a round of applause because they have dedicated their time to come into Nordic Business Forum to keep learning.
Exactly.
Amazing. Thanks for joining us. We need to move on to our next guest, but please give it up for April and Peter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.